Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Homewood City Council meeting for February 24th, 2020. We're going to begin tonight before our call to order with a couple of proclamations. And we have one first for Colorectal Cancer Month coming up next month. And I believe we have Susan Waldrop and some others here for a proclamation. If you guys will come forward for that at this time, and the mayor, if you have that, we'll take up that first proclamation. Thank you.
I didn't realize they were going to wrap these things. At least it's clear plastic. Hey, thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you.
I know y'all spoke earlier, so we'll read the proclamation, and then if there's anything y'all would like to say afterward, you certainly can. Whereas March is National Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States among men and women combined, but there's currently no cure, and whereas 1 in 20 men and 1 in 24 women will be diagnosed with colorectal cancer in their lifetimes, and whereas there are now more than 1 million survivors of colorectal cancer in the United States, and whereas the national goal established by the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable is 80% of Americans age 50 or older be screened in every community. And whereas about 1 in 3 adults ages 50 years and older, about 38 million people, are not getting tested as recommended. And whereas when adults get screened for colorectal cancer, it can be detected early when treatment is most likely to be successful. In most cases, it can be prevented completely. And whereas it's critical that all people of all ages know the signs and symptoms of the disease, and whereas the American Cancer Society established Go Blue Day as a concentrated effort to raise awareness of colorectal cancer and to motivate unscreened individuals to talk to their primary health care provider about screening options. So now, therefore, I, Scott McBrayer, Mayor of the City of Homewood, hereby proclaim the month of March 2020 as National Colorectal Cancer Month in the City of Homewood, and encourage citizens to go blue on Friday, March 6, 2020, by wearing blue and participating in additional awareness activities. And ladies, thank y'all so very much for your efforts in leading this cause.
Thank you. It's very important. Appreciate you so much. Just we appreciate you, and you're already dressed for the occasion. But the biggest thing is that people do not have to die from colon cancer. Of all the the cancers that we see people suffer from, that one we can get ahead of. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
If you played Atari, get screened. If you grew up playing Atari, it's time to get screened.
Atari. Unfortunately, that is me. Unfortunately, I have taken your advice, so thank you. Some of these others do not know what Atari is, and we'll be educating them. But thank you all very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, that will be March 6th, 2020, Go Blue Day. Everybody wear their blue on March 6th. So thank you all very much.
Please. And I didn't think you could ever say colorectal so many times in one speech.
Job well done. Thank you all. All right, we have another proclamation for National Association for Women in Construction, and proclamation for you all. Thank you. Please come forward. Thank you, Mayor.
How are you, ladies?
Wonderful.
Good. Thank you very much for being here. So we have another proclamation. This is Women in Construction Week, March 1 through 7, 2020. Whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction has distinguished itself for 52 years as the voice of women in construction in the greater Birmingham area. And whereas the work done by the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction has benefited the greater Birmingham area through community development and educational programs. And whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in the construction industry. And whereas the construction community, represented by Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction, has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification, promotion of skilled trade careers, and a positive vision of the future. And whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction has sought to achieve successful results for Homewood and surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations. So now, therefore, I, Scott McBrayer, hereby recognize the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction and its many dedicated volunteers for its steadfast work on behalf and support of women in construction, and do proudly proclaim the week of March 1st through 7, 2020 as Women in Construction Week, and encourage our citizens to congratulate the organization on its many accomplishments. Ladies, thank y'all on behalf of all the residents of Homewood.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Good?
much.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Appreciate y'all.
Appreciate you.
Thank you all, ladies. All right, with that, we will move to our call to order for tonight's meeting, and we'll begin with invocation. And I have Melody is going to lead us in invocation. Is that correct, Ms. Salter?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And
Well,
then we'll
actually-
followed by the pledge with our
We have a flag right
flag
now.
that is pleasant.
Yay. Actually, JJ was supposed to use his influence on OLS to get us somebody today, but he let me know that Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. And I have grown up all my life in a church that we don't do anything on Ash Wednesday, although we believe in Jesus and the crucifixion and all that. So I've always been jealous of everybody that got to have their ashes. So I did a little research today, and it said, I wanted to give you just a little history, that Ash Wednesday marks the first day of the 40 days of Lent, a 6-week period, excluding Sundays, dedicated to prayer, fasting, and reflection in the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Ash Wednesday is the best way to begin a season which calls us into self-examination as well as self-denial, into deeper contemplation about the mystery and grace of God's mercy, and towards more radical giving towards those most in need of comfort, sustenance, and hope. And now everybody knows I'm an overachiever, so I'm going to say a prayer for Ash Wednesday early. And since I've been working at Homewood, I usually go to OLS to get my ashes so I can participate in that. So we'll say our prayer now. So prayer for Ash Wednesday. Lord, Holy One, have mercy on us. We confess our sins to you. We have fallen short of your glory, and without your mercy and grace, we would be dust. We repent now, Lord, as we enter into this Lenten season. Be near to us. Help us by your Holy Spirit to feel right conviction and repentance for our sin. Help us by your Spirit to have the strength to overcome the enemy. Amen.
Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Ms. Salter. And we'll begin with roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gwaltney? Mr. Thames? Here. Mr. Higginbotham? Here. Mr. Wolverton? Here. Mr. McCluskey? Here. Mr. Jones? Here. Mrs. Smith? Here. Mr. Wyatt? Here. Mrs. Andress?
Here.
Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright.
Here.
So you have a
And
quorum.
Record reflect that I believe Councilor Gwaltney will be showing up here a little bit late today. He did call me to let me know that. All right. So first item is to entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes from February 10th, 2020.
So moved.
By
Second.
Ms. Andrus, second by Mrs. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? For those minutes? Yes, please. Abstention on approval of the minutes for February 10th from Mr. Hickenbotham. Okay. And I'm going to mention a couple of board vacancy issues we have. First, we have for the Homewood Environmental Commission, we actually have a term, I think it's Amy Milam's term, is going to be expiring on March 20, and we are going to be looking for a new person to fill that spot. And Mr. Hickenbotham, I will just, without any objection from anyone else, thought we would go ahead and open that tonight and keep it open perhaps through our next I guess it will be our next meeting on March 9th. I don't know if that's going to be enough time or not, but we do have a term expiring on March 20, so I thought we'd perhaps give it a shot.
That's fine.
Okay, all right, so without objection, we will open the at-large position for Homewood Environmental Commission tonight, and will remain open until our meeting, what should I say, 5 o'clock? Is that what we say, Melody?
4:30. But that
4:30?
that 20 on your note, that's actually just saying that her term expires on March of 2020. It wasn't that on the 20th of the day.
Oh, it was not, so.
No, sir, it was just in
Okay.
March,
Well,
but,
we'll keep it on March 9th.
Till 4:30.
At 4:30
Okay.
on March 9th, so thank you. One other one, we have Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 7 positions that are open on this one, and I know I'm not going to belabor a discussion on that tonight, other than perhaps to mention we might want to take an opportunity to look at that. It's not on our committee referral agenda, but perhaps we can all be thinking about that for future committee referral agendas on what and how to address our Board of Adjustments and Appeals. But for now, I have a bunch of openings, and I'm going to reopen those positions and let those remain open until 4:30 on May 11th. So that'll give us plenty of time if we're going to see how we're going to work through this. But that's where we're going to sit right now. So 4:30 at May 11th without objection.
I did want to say, too, we talked about this, that we have had a couple people apply, but that's one, and Mr. Kendrick can allude to it better than I can, too, but Mr. Pugh, that by code section, they have to have a particular
Qualifications,
expertise in the
yeah.
construction industry, and the
Yeah.
2 people that we've had so far apply didn't meet the criteria.
It's
So that's why when, in talking about it, it's a little bit harder to fill in other
Very tough to
positions.
fill. I understand, which will be perhaps part of our discussion as we look at this. All right, so thank you for that. And with that, we're going to look at some amendments to tonight's agenda. We have a few of them. 200220, request to consider plaza and parking improvements, coming to us from Councilors Andrus, Gwaltney, and Thames. This is going to be sent to our Planning and Development Committee. We have 210220, request to amend fiscal year 2019-2020 budgets from Robert Burgett, our Finance Director, and Melody Salter, our City Clerk. We're going to send that to Finance Committee. 220220, request for consideration to work in the city right-of-way at 211 Lakeshore Parkway, coming to us from Interplan, Chick-fil-A, and Mr. Cobb and Wyatt Pugh with our BEZ department. We're going to send that to Special Issues Committee. 230220, which is a request for consideration to restructure Creek Wall at Wingate Circle. This is coming to us from Councilors Patrick McCluskey and Walter Jones. We're going to send that one to Public Works Committee. 240220, which is a request for consideration of purchasing additional cybersecurity coverage for the city. This is coming to us from Robert Burgett, our Finance Director, and Mrs. Salter, our Clerk, City Clerk, and we're going to send that one to Finance Committee. And then I believe actually, 2 more here. And then 1 more to committee referral, 250220, which is a request for authorization for our mayor to enter into a road-through agreement with Jefferson County. And we're going to send that one to Finance Committee. Now, those are all the committee referral agenda changes we are going to have. And I believe I'm going to make one other change here. Yes, Mr. Jones.
Would you have any objection from 230220 to also with finance? We're going to need to fund that creek wall.
certainly no objection to that. So that'll go to Public Works Committee and Finance, Ms. Salter.
Okay.
Then that's going to get us to what has been published on our committee referral agenda, 140220. Without objection, I would like to take that out of tonight's committee referral agenda and move that to our other new business agenda. And let me tell you what that is. It's 140220, which is a request for consideration for lighting for the Soho Garage. This coming to us from Councilor Jennifer Andrus and Berkeley Squires. And instead of sending this to Finance Committee, we're going to take this up tonight for discussion under other new business. So that'll be 140220, going to other new business. All right, so with all those changes, I have a motion to approve by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. McCluskey. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so tonight's amended agenda is approved. I'll begin with our consent agenda. You'll see the items there. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
By Mrs. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Andrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the consent agenda is approved. Now we'll get into our old business agenda. First item is a public hearing set for tonight for consideration of a variance to the driveway ordinance at 149 Gillen Drive and permission to work in the city right-of-way, coming to us from Mr. Paul Harbin and Greg Cobb with our BEZ department. And we'll begin on this item with a report from Special Issues. Mrs. Smith.
Yes, the committee met last week and voted 5-0 to refer this item back out to the full council pending the public hearing tonight. After hearing from Mr. Harbin and seeing his design plans. The motion was made by Ms. Andrus and seconded by Mr. Gwaltney.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and Mr. Cobb will begin, I guess, with you and Mr. Harbin on what we have to do, what you guys are seeking.
Okay, Mr. Harbin's lot sits facing the center of an intersection, so it doesn't face one street or the other, but it faces actually the center of the intersection. And we have a photo there of the driveway he's requested to put on the right side of his property because his house is unusually sitting on the lot. The variance to the driveway ordinance is that it's 25 feet wide, and in a residential lot, the standard is 20 feet in width. So you need a 5-foot variance on the width of the lot, and he's also out in this. That's also carries out into the city right of way.
Okay, so it's a 5-foot variance that
In the
goes
width.
into the city right-of-way, so we need approval for the 5-foot variance and permission to work in the right-of-way.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Ryan,
Yes.
unfortunately, I put them in separate resolutions.
Okay.
'Cause there was
Okay,
original-
oh, you put the right-of-way and the 5-foot variance into separate, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's take up,
The driveway, 'cause it's over.
all right, let's take up the public hearing. Let's just deal with the 5-foot variance right now. Will the right-of-way, Mr. Kendrick, it won't need a public hearing, is that correct?
sir.
Okay, so let's just take up the 5-foot variance first. There's public hearing on the 5-foot variance. Thank you, Mr. Cobb and Mr. Harbin. Do you have anything you'd like to explain on what you're seeking to accomplish here?
Certainly. If you look at where the driveway comes in here, because the house sits diagonally, to line up my driveway to the side of my house, which I would do normally if the house was configured facing the street, there's a logical place for me to put it, but I have 3 different sort of hardships. One is that there is a telephone pole kind of just to the right of where I want to put it, so I can't bring a driveway straight into that area. Second is that because I'm on a diagonal, when I come into that area, the way that they measure the width of the driveway is actually along the right-of-way, as opposed to coming across the driveway. And so even if I were to put a 15-foot wide driveway there, it still doesn't really meet that. So I've got that consideration there, but then I've also got 15-foot?
He's got a huge right of way in front of his house.
There's about a 15 to 18 and maybe
It's big.
18-foot right-of-way that comes up in there, so I can't even build anything that would allow me to put more than 2 cars in a driveway because I'm going to be in the right-of-way no matter where I am. And so the diagonal house, the huge right-of-way, and the telephone pole. What I can do, and what, without getting a variance, an option I do have is that I could start about a little bit to the left of where this driveway is, and I could build a 20-foot driveway all the way across my front yard and out into Raleigh. So it would be a 20-foot circular drive that would come in one street and go out the other, and be a huge amount of cement, and probably take out some big trees as well by going through there. But it doesn't meet my needs. It doesn't help me. It's not, doesn't even make sense for any other reason. So this is a whole lot less cement, and it's in a logical spot. So pretty much that's based on those different hardships. We'd like to put it right there where it makes sense.
It also pulls it further away from the corner of the intersection, and our ordinances don't allow you to have a driveway within 30 feet of any corner intersection. So by going back to this side, he doesn't have any cars out here blocking the intersection view or anything like that. He gets them off the street.
Gotcha. All right, thank you, sir. This is a public hearing, and I know while Mr. Harbin's up here, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Harbin while he's up here? If not, and we'll have time for questions and discussion later if needed. Public hearing, ask for, thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against this item, please come forward now.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and
I don't
close
do this very
public
often.
hearing. And council, I will ask if there are any comments or discussion from the council.
I would make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval from...
Of the variance.
For the variance, it's just for the 5-foot variance. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Second by Mr. Hickenbotham. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the variance for the 5-foot variance is approved, and that would be Resolution 2771.
No, that's 2022.
2022.
I'm sorry, I looked at my ordinance. Thank you. I'm sorry. 2022. Thank you, Mike. All right, and while we have it, let's take up the second item, which is not a public hearing, but is the right and permission to work in the right-of-way. I don't know if any further discussion needs to be had on that, but I think we've got a discussion that in order to construct the driveway now with the approved 5-foot variance, it requires approval to work in the right-of-way. And so I'll ask if there's any questions or discussions about that.
I would make a motion to approve the
Seeing
work in the
none,
right of
I
way.
will accept a motion for approval from Mrs. Smith and a second from Mr. Wolverton. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the approval to work in the right-of-way, is that a resolution, Mike?
Yes, sir.
That'll be 20-23 will stand approved. So thank you, Mr. Cobb. Thank you, Mr. Harbin. All right, next item is 270120, public hearing tonight for consideration of a variance to the driveway ordinance at 509 Devon Drive and permission to work in the city of right-of-way. And so, Mike, I will take up these separately as well.
Yes, sir.
We will begin with a report from special issues on this item. Mrs. Smith.
Yes, we met last week and voted 5-0 to refer the item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing tonight. Motion made by Mr. Higginbotham and seconded by Councilor Andrus, and the homeowner was not able to attend the meeting last week, although I know he's been in contact with Mr. Pugh today.
He did.
But he's not here, so assuming.
All right, well, this is a public hearing for tonight, so we are going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And Mr. Cobb, I'll at least let you go ahead and explain perhaps what we have here, and we'll see if anyone is here to speak in favor or against this item. Mr. Cobb, if you can tell us what we have.
Okay, this is a parking pad adjacent to the city street in front of the home. We should have some photos of it. It's parallel and adjacent to the street.
I know he sent them to Brian, I know he sent it to Wyatt today.
Yeah, Wyatt told me he sent it on.
He sent it on to Brian, okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a picture of it then.
Okay.
But it's a parking pad parallel and adjacent to the front property line and near their driveway. And it's got a split-face rock retaining wall. It's an uphill driveway, so it's got a very attractive split-face retaining wall that looks to be about 3 feet tall. Oh, okay, he's got it. Great. Messed me up. Well, it's permission to work in the city right away. Typically, anytime somebody does a pull-off, anytime somebody does a pull-off in front of their property, it's in the right of way, and it's not our normal driveway. Our normal driveway is inside of our standard is maximum of 20 feet wide, like I mentioned earlier. So this is there we go.
This is a wider driveway.
See, he's got 10 feet coming off the side of the road, which is wide enough to set a car on. It's still up the doors, and that's a 3-foot split-face rock retaining wall to where you cut into that hill going up. It's beside his driveway, so there's his driveway. It's a good picture of it. So he'll have, be able to get his car off the street so it doesn't block the road. If you know, all those roads over there are pretty narrow. Devon Drive, I haven't measured all of it, but I know that up on the western end is only 18 feet wide to start with. So our ordinance says you have to have 16 feet, 18 feet of clear asphalt to the side of your car whenever you park on the street. That's to allow emergency vehicles to pass and all such as that. So if he parked out in the street instead of back like that, he would be violating our ordinance by making the road too narrow.
And I think he's also using that for a 3-point turn because the steep,
Is that right?
That's right.
It's
because
pretty
of
steep driveway.
Yeah.
But it's long enough, it's 15 feet long, 10 foot wide, which is about the length of a car. I know they're all different sizes, but I've got a pickup truck and I measured it all the time, figured out how long it is, and it's 17 feet long. So cars are usually around in the 15 feet range.
All right. Thank you, sir. Let me first recognize, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor or against this item? All right, so I see no one's here. I understand the property owner is not here. So we can do one of two things. We can, and I'll defer to the council here what you guys want to, so we can continue this public hearing. If the property owner wishes to attend perhaps the next council meeting, or if you guys are comfortable with it, we could take action on it. So, I don't know.
I'm comfortable with, I think it looks nice, and I recognize the hardship of the lots on that end of Devon, and I'm comfortable with it. But if anyone objects and wants to hear back from him, we can ask him to come back. I know he's got some landscaping that he wants to do in addition to, so.
He came to the first meeting, but needed to go back and get some more information about what he was doing and get a better plan, a better drawing for us. So he did attend the first meeting. He just wasn't able to attend last week because he was out of town, I believe.
And he's been in contact. I've conversed with him regularly, and he spoke with Wyatt today, so.
Okay. All right, council, any further questions for Mr. Cobb while he's up here about this? Concerns? All right, I'll tell you what I think I'm going to do, since it's only just a property owner. I think I'm going to close the public hearing. And so, seeing no one else here to speak in favor or against this, we're going to close the public hearing on this item. And I will turn over to council for any further comments and whether to take action on this tonight or carry it over, whichever one you guys prefer.
I'll move to approve.
All right, so we have a motion for approval by Ms. Andrus. Second by Mr. McCluskey. Any further questions or discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that's going
Thank you.
to pass 9-0, and that will be resolution 20-24.
We're 10 now, Mr. Gwaltney's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Gwaltney. I do see you down there. Thank you. 10-0. All right, that'll get us to our next item, which is a 070120, which is a public hearing set for March 9th at 6 p.m. for consideration to rezone property at 1619 Oxmoor Road from R5 to a C1C.
President Wright, we got to do the right of way on the other one.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Hold it. Let's get off, let's be clear. So we are not on 070120 before anyone moves to approve anything. We are back on 270120. We do need to approve the permission to work in the right-of-way for the driveway at 509 Devon Drive. Now we'll entertain a motion for approval by Mr. Thames. Second by Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that right-of-way is approved, and that will be Resolution 20-25. All right, now back to 070120, which is a public hearing for tonight for, excuse me, not public, it's a public hearing for March 9th for the rezone of the property at 1619 Oxmoor Road. And so we will carry that item over for public hearing. Again, that will be set for March 9th at 6 p.m. Next item, 05-1119, request to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Birmingham Jefferson Transit Authority for fiscal year 2019-2020 services. And without objection, we're going to carry this item over as well, as I think we're still waiting on some further communication from the City of Birmingham Transit Authority, or the Birmingham Jefferson Transit Authority, not the city, but the Transit Authority itself on that. Next item, 03-0220, request to enter an agreement with St. Vincent's Occupational Health. This item coming to us from Mayor McBrayer, and we will begin with this with a report from Finance. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met on February 18th, and after hearing from the mayor and Kim Starling with St. Vincent's Occupational Health, voted 5-0 to recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We have a 5-0 favorable vote from Finance. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that will stand approved by a vote of 10-0. And that is, lost my page here, 20-26, Resolution 20-26. Next item, 04-0220, request to authorize expenditures for the 2020 census participation. Coming to us from our counselors, Jennifer Andrus and Barry Smith, and we will begin with a report from Finance on this item as well. Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met and voted 5-0, recommending approval to fund not to exceed $1,000 from our advertising line item.
Thank you, sir. So it's a 5-0 favorable vote from Finance. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that will be approved 10-0. And Resolution 20-27. Thank you, sir. 04-0120, request for consideration of freshwater land trust and in-stream litter collection. This is an item coming to us from Russia Smith with the Freshwater Land Trust, who's the executive director, and Sally LaRue, outreach director with the Land Trust, and our own Jennifer Andrus. And we will begin with a report from Public Works on this.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee met last Tuesday, the 18th, and voted 5-0 to refer this item to the Finance Committee for funding. The motion was made by Councilman McCluskey, seconded by Councilman Wyatt.
All right, so that's a 5-0 vote to send to Finance, and just for, I'll take a vote on that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we'll send that item to Finance. Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. 140120, request for consideration to add certain streets to the parking enforcement ordinance. This item coming to us from Councilors Andy Gwaltney and Mr. Britt Thames, and we'll begin with a report from Public Works on this as well.
Mr. President, the committee met last Tuesday, the 18th, and voted 5-0 to recommend approval of including Reese, Linden, Crescent, and Central to the 3-hour parking ordinance for downtown. The motion was made by Councilor Wyatt, seconded by Councilor Harden.
All right, thank you, sir, Mr. Gwaltney. And I believe this is an ordinance, so we're going to start with our first reading. Mr. Kendrick.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. It's an ordinance to further regulate traffic in the city on or along that portion of Central Avenue between 28th Avenue South and 28th Court South, on or along Reese Street, on or along Linden Street, and on or along Crescent Street, and to provide penalties for the violation thereof. City Council ordains as follows, that being lawful for any person, firm, or corporation to park or permit to be parked a motor vehicle as defined in the Highway Code in the public parking on-street parking spaces on along that portion of Central Avenue between 28th Avenue South and 28th Court South, on along Reese Street, on along Linden Street, and on along Crescent Avenue in the city for a period of time in excess of 3 consecutive hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Monday through Friday of each day of the week. Section 2, that the chief of police for the city is authorized and directed to erect and install markings and signs indicating the limited parking is provided by Section 1 above. Section 3, that any violation of this ordinance upon conviction shall be punished as provided by Section 1-8 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Homewood. Section 4, if any part of provision or ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction on all the parts or provisions or sections of the ordinance not affected thereby shall remain in full force and effect. Section 5, the provisions of this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor and city council or as otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. So I will, since we have an ordinance here, I will ask for a motion for unanimous consent by Mr. McCluskey.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Smith, and roll call vote, Ms. Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, and so that is unanimous approval for dispense with the second reading, and now entertain a motion for action on the item.
So moved.
By Mr. Thames,
Second.
second by Mr. Wyatt. And roll call vote, Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham? Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, and so that is unanimous approval of ordinance 2771 with a vote of 10 to 0. Thank you all very much. Next item is 200120, which is a request to look at options to improve parking at the intersection of 19th Place and 29th Avenue. This is coming to us from Jennifer Mims and Councilor Jennifer Andrus, and we will begin on this item with a report from Public Works as well. Mr. Gwaltney?
Mr. President, the committee met last Tuesday and voted 5-0 to recommend approval and referral to the Finance Committee. The motion was made by Councilor Wyatt and seconded by Councilor Harden.
Okay, so another action approval to go to the Finance, so just for clarity's sake, I will ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And so that item will be sent to Finance. And Mike, is that a resolution on that?
Yes, sir. Well, not to send it to finance.
Yeah, not to send to
I sent
finance.
you a resolution anticipating.
Approval, but it's going to go to
The
Finance.
two items
Gotcha.
that we had earlier at Finance, we had resolution numbers under them, but I took them off.
Neither
They
one's
didn't
Finance.
actually
Yeah,
become
That's
resolutions.
what I thought. Thank you. All right, next item, 100220, request for consideration for a tent variance for Trinity United Methodist Church during Discovery Weekend, coming to us from Barry Smith. And I will begin with a report from Special Issues and Mrs. Barry Smith.
The committee met last week and voted 5-0 to recommend approving the variance to allow the tent to be erected in the parking lot on the Seminole side of the church the weekend of March 6th through the March 8th. Motion was made by Mr. McCluskey and seconded by Ms. Andrus.
Thank you. And so that's a favorable vote coming out of Special Issues. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that is a 10-0 vote with Resolution 2028 standing approved. Next item, 081019, request to set a public hearing for consideration for the city to vacate land between 904 Highland Road and 909 Irving Road. And this item is coming to us from Holly Polk and Will Gardner, and Mr. Pugh and Mr. Cobb from our BEZ department. And looks like I do have down here a report from Special Issues on this. Do you have a report on this?
Sure.
All right, well, I'll take a report, and I believe we're going to set a public hearing on this.
We
but
are.
I'll take a report.
Yes. This item had been on the table. We took it off the table in order to set a public hearing for the vacation of this alley, and we voted 5-0 to set that public hearing for March the 30th.
All right, so we're going to approve that tonight. Well, I think without, well, I'll go and take a vote on it. I'll entertain a motion to set this item for public hearing for March 30, 2020.
So moved.
By Mrs. Smith. Second by Mr. McCluskey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that public hearing will be set for March 30, and Mr. Jones, I think I didn't have to take that motion in second, did I? That was beautiful. But we can't be overcautious, can we? All right. Thank you. So now we're going to get to our committee referral agenda, which has been amended, and I will ask for a motion and second to approve tonight's committee referral agenda as amended. By Mr. Hickenbotham, second by Mr. Waltney. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the committee referral agenda as amended has been approved. And that gets us to other new business. And 180220, which is a request to modify a sign ordinance. This coming to us from our city attorney, Mike Kendrick, and our city clerk, Melody Salter. And I think I'm again, Mr. Wyatt, if you can help navigate us through, or should I begin with Mr. Kendrick?
Either way.
Okay. Mr. Kendrick, do you want to help us with where we are in our sign ordinance?
The sign ordinance you passed in December exempted the downtown district in anticipation for the public hearing next month for the downtown zoning district. Because that's now been in hold in the planning commission, it's appropriate that we've taken from that ordinance the sign provisions and incorporate into this new ordinance that would essentially amend and repeal what you adopted in December, so that we have sign provisions that would cover the downtown district pending the approval or whenever the process might fall for the zoning ordinance. Otherwise, we have no zoning ordinance for the downtown district.
And with regard to signs?
Signs, that's
So this
correct.
is a matter of having a sign regulation or no sign regulation for the interim period?
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion, Mr. Wyatt?
Well, I would just say it's a matter of having no sign ordinance, which leaves open even pole signs coming in downtown. So I would recommend that we move on this.
All right, so as I understand, this is going to be an ordinance, and
Yes,
so
sir.
we will need a first reading of this item.
Yes, sir. It's
Mr. Kendrick.
simply, what the process is, we've taken the ordinance we adopted in December, essentially, and we will repeal that and adopt a new ordinance that includes a section dealing with the downtown district. So it's rather lengthy, so I'll go through, but the only change is simply to take the downtown district zoning sign provisions and incorporate them into this sign ordinance. Section 5-150, it deals with the purpose and the scope, which is identical to what you approved previously in December. Section 5-151 deals with prohibited signs, which is identical to what you have approved previously. Section 5-152 deals with general requirements for signage in the city. It has a Table 1, which is the temporary sign restrictions that were identical to what you previously adopted. Has Table 2, a general sign restriction provisions. Section 5-153 deals with freestanding sign requirements, which is identical to what you previously adopted. Table 3 deals with specific freestanding sign regulations and illustrations, which are identical to what was adopted in December. Section 5-154 deals with attached sign requirements. Table 4 deals with specific attached sign regulations and illustrations. Section 5-155 deal with the Brookwood Mall Signs District, which is identical to what was previously adopted. Section 5-156 deals with the Wildwood Center signs regulations, which are identical to what you previously adopted. Section 5-157 deals with specific sign areas, West Homewood in particular, which is identical to what you previously adopted, exempts those. Section 5-158 deals with the downtown district signs, which was cut and pasted from the downtown rezoning ordinance by our consultant, and it really is the provision that's been modified, but it tracks identically those provisions that were in the downtown district that wasn't included in the previous December approval. Section 5-159 deals with administration and enforcement, which are identical to the provisions you adopted in December. Section 5-160 deals with definitions, which again are identical to what has previously been adopted. Section 5-161 deals with a saving provision. It provides that the adoption of these regulations don't affect any pending actions that are presently before the council. Section B of this ordinance says that all of the provisions of Chapter 5 entitled Building, Construction, and Related Activities, except those set out here, remain in full force and effect. Section C deals with Ordinance 2767, which is the previous signed ordinance adopted on December 9th, is repealed by the adoption of this ordinance. And Section D says that the ordinance shall become immediately effective upon its adoption by the City Council and approval by the mayor, or is otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, sir. All right, so that's our first reading. We'll request a motion for unanimous consent by Mr. Wyatt,
Second.
second by Mrs. Smith, and roll call vote, Ms. Salter.
Mr. Gwaltney? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Thames? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Higginbotham? Yes. Mr. Wolverton? Yes. Mr. McCluskey? Yes. Mr. Jones? Yes. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, and so unanimous consent is approved. And now, for action on the item, I entertain a motion for approval
So moved.
by Mr. Wyatt. Second by Mr. Gwaltney. And another roll call vote, excuse me, Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just, for the record, wanted to note, I still have the same concerns about the sign ordinance we adopted several months ago. I will be voting yes tonight because we have to have some sort of regulation for our signs in downtown, but I don't want it to be misconstrued as if I have changed my mind about the other items in this ordinance, but it seems a bit pointless for me to vote no tonight, and we do need the downtown sign regulations. So I just wanted to say that for the record before.
You don't like neon, is that correct?
No, I'm fine with neon,
Oh, you
and
like the
I'm
neon.
fine with, I'm okay with that. It's,
Okay.
there were a number of items, I don't think we want to rehash it here.
All
I
right,
just wanted
gotcha.
to
I just thought I
have
would-
somewhere noted that I have not changed my mind. I
My-
simply am supporting this
I
because of
noted
the
you have the same
downtown.
concerns as you had before.
That is
My
exactly
mistake.
right. Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote, Ms. Salter.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames? Yes, Mr. Higginbotham? Yes. Mr. Wolverton? Yes. Mr. McCluskey? Yes. Mr. Jones? Yes. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, and so that will be approved, and pardon me, Mike, I lost track of which ordinance.
2772.
2772, thank you.
Ordinance 2772.
Ordinance 2772 stands approved by a vote of 10-0. All right, next item, 190220, which is a request for consideration of approval of vouchers for the period of February 11th, 2020 through February 24th, 2020. And who has the honors? Mrs. Smith, thank you for your service.
Yes. And I told Mr. Harden that I was going to school him on the checking the vouchers because he's a little worried about how that's supposed to work. And I told him that nobody schooled me. I just had to figure it out. So, but I'm going to be kind and teach him how to do it.
Let you down.
I'm just saying. But had some questions. Robert answered them all. We had a couple of late ads that came in this afternoon, which I looked over and approved, one for the public safety and one for the flag for Chief Bresnan's funeral. So everything looked good, and I would move to approve the vouchers.
Thank you for that. A motion for approval by Mrs. Smith, second by Mr. Higginbotham. And yes, I think Mr. Harden will need some schooling, and so I'm glad you will be there for that purpose. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And so the vouchers through February 24th, 2020 stand as approved. And that gets us to our last item, which is 140220, which is a request for consideration for lighting for the Soho Garage. This item coming to us from Councilor Jennifer Andress and Berkeley Squires, our Public Works and Streets Director. And this was going to be an item we're going to talk about tonight. Ms. Andress, I don't know if you want to start us off.
Sure. We began a couple of years ago looking at ways to improve the resident experience, shall we say, with the parking garage and to encourage more people to park down there. And one of the things that we all identified was better lighting. At the time, Berkeley was looking into LED lighting for the entire city. So this certainly, complements that effort. This is a contract not to exceed $49,000 from Stone & Sons Electrical. And he's concerned about this possibly getting it out of China for the coronavirus. So that's why I'm asked to move it to new business tonight.
Talking about just getting the materials over here?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I hope it's already out of China. Okay, and do we know where this is going to be funded from?
I think Robert has it because we got to amend the budget.
We'd have to do a budget amendment, and the money would be taken from carryover fund balance, which is 1209-499-300, and transferred into 1211-589-150 building inspections, building improvements capital.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. So do I have any further questions or discussion on this item? And Ms. Andrus, did you move for approval?
I will move to approve.
Okay, well, you did now. So we have a motion for approval from Ms. Andrus. Do I have a second from Mr. Thames? Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so this contract for lighting for the Soho Garage will be approved, and that is very much needed because that garage has been too dark for too long. So I'm excited getting some lighting down there. All right, so that'll bring us to the end of our agenda and announcements, and we'll begin with Mr. Mayor.
Resolution 2030? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for those of you who would like a video showing Mr. Higginbotham voting for a sign, maybe a first.
Set yourself up for that.
Messing with you. That's perfect. All right, so last week had the chance to meet with Mayor Welch over in Mountain Brook to start the promotion of our third annual Shades Creek Fest. That's going to be coming up on Saturday, April the 25th. That's going to be at Jemison Park, where Homewood and Mountain Brook are going to work together on that. And it's a lot of fun. If you've never attended it, it's a great little park over there. Caliber's a main sponsor, of course, which is in Homewood. They'll be offering free fly fishing lessons for the kids and adults too, if you want to. That's always a lot of fun. They'll have live music. Last year I think they had bluegrass, so I was happy with that. So I mean, it's a great day when you can have fishing and bluegrass music. So that was fun. And then but they'll have live music, and then another thing that they always do is a tree giveaway. So you can simply go by one of the tents, and they have people there to give you a tree for you to take home and to plant. The road through agreement, I know that has been sent to finance, but just a short background. If you remember several years ago, the county basically notified us stating, congratulations, y'all can pave the county roads that go through your city. We respectfully denied that. But we have come to an agreement where now the county will pay for the portion of the county roads, and I think there are about 5. So at the committee meeting, we'll be prepared to show you specifically which roads will be paved by the county. Hopefully at the next meeting we can get that done and make those improvements to our streets. We also spoke to Mr. Leonard with ALDOT this past week, and they've gone ahead and made the request for the $500,000 that we had negotiated with them for the Green Springs Revitalization Project. So went ahead and put that request in. They've sent it up the chain, so hopefully it won't take long to get those funds, they've already been approved, but we just need to get the check transferred. This past Friday, JJ and I had the opportunity to attend groundbreaking ceremony for Creative Montessori School. And there's a ton of kids, a lot of parents there, and it was groundbreaking for their new gymnasium and their turf field, which Berkeley would be jealous of. It's really nice over there, but their fundraiser this year was a little over $1.6 million. And even the kids had their own separate little fundraiser where they raised a little over $2,000 themselves. But, Creative Montessori School, Miss Barbara Spitzer, I don't know if you know her or not, but she was really instrumental in starting that school and bought the land in 1968. And at that time, I learned Friday that there were several places around where the kids were considered going to school there. One was the old State Farm building on Oxmoor Road. Some went there. Some went to a Presbyterian church. And eventually the dream was to get them on one campus. So they've had a lot of good celebrations and achievements over there. And it's really a nice addition to our city. And Jennifer, I know you did a lot of work on the, it's hard to say, the litter getter.
Oh, the litter getter.
Say that 3 times real fast. But anyway, Freshwater Land Trust sent a really nice letter to the city, and it just says, on behalf of the Freshwater Land Trust, I'd like to express our gratitude to the city of Homewood. Thank you for granting the opportunity to present the project at Public Works. Thank you, too, for giving permission to add to our website and visibly show your support for this project. So, well, you will. The way y'all were talking the other night, you will. So, Jennifer, do you want to get him?
Yeah.
Huh?
Who knows?
We'll wait a second. And then, last but certainly not least, Saturday, March the 7th, will be the Exceptional Foundation's 16th annual chili cook-off, be held at Brookwood Village. That's always a lot of fun, and I don't know of a better cause in the world. So we expect, there's always record crowd, seems like every year. So we would expect the same. I think tickets are $10 online and $15 at the gate, and money well invested. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gwaltney? Oh, I tell you what, before we begin, make sure we approve this. I want to make sure we get our, I know we've discussed this, I want to make sure we get it approved for the meeting days for March. Everything is going to be normal, except for our last council meeting. Instead of it being on the 23rd during spring break, when we will never be able to maintain a quorum, we will move that meeting to the 30th of March. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval from Mr. Jones, second by Mr. McCluskey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so with that, I know we're going to change your committee date, but nonetheless, we got March approved. All right, Mr. Gwaltney, thank you.
Councilor Jones, how much do you need for finance? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I will set public works for 5:30. And I have no additional comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Mr. James?
I did speak with Mr. Cobb, and he'll be ready to discuss sidewalks next week, so I'll set, how long did you say? P&D for 5:45 will take 30 minutes. There are a few other things on there we'll probably talk about. And I did want to pass on a thanks to Mr. Bischoff from Dr. Cleveland and the school board at the school board meeting last week. They praised your help in during the flooding issues we've had, getting kids in and out of the high school and things like that. So thank you from Dr. Cleveland and the school board, and us.
Thank you, Mr. Thames, and thank you, Mr. Bischoff. Mr. Hickenbottom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the only thing, I do apologize for my absence last week from the council meeting. I think that was my third, so I was feeling a bit queasy, and rather than coming in and having the possibility of sharing a vomitous display with our folks on YouTube, I decided I would just stay at home and make sure that everything remained a personal matter. So I do apologize for not being able to be here, though, and wanted to say that. And although I know full well everyone carried on fabulously without me, so thank you.
We barely survived, but I appreciate your sincere apologies. Mr. Wolferton.
Just a quick thank you to Matt Andrews and Trinity West Homewood. He invited me out on Sunday to speak to the congregation at 2 different services just about city ongoings and how to be a good neighbor, and just what things they could be doing to engage the community and help out. So I enjoyed that and thank them for the opportunity. And then we also wanted to thank Shades Valley Community Church for allowing us to host a meeting last week. And quite frankly, all of the churches in the West Homewood area have been very accommodating. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCluskey?
Mr. Thames, you said 30 minutes? Okay, so I'll set public safety for 6:15. I'm only going to need 15 minutes, so should go by pretty fast. Just a couple of quick announcements. I believe move-in day for the new classrooms at Hall Kent is actually next week, so that's exciting for some of those teachers that have been dying to get in those new classrooms. Construction's pretty much done, so I know they're pretty excited about doing that. The Green Springs revitalization concepts that Mr. Mayor mentioned earlier, we're going to have a second viewing of that coming up in March. We don't quite know the date yet. We'll get that nailed down, but be looking for that on the city's website and through social media. It'll be in this room again, just like it was last week. And then lastly, I know some people had seen it, but I had the privilege of working with Tricia Kirk and Robbie from the Exceptional Foundation in getting the Singing Cupids to come to my wife's school for Valentine's Day. It was absolutely incredible. For those of you who don't already or have not been to Dinnertainment or any of the other events that the Exceptional Foundation puts on, there are several men and women from there that really enjoyed to sing. So it was pretty incredible, and the kids from her classroom were very excited to have a special singing guest. So it's pretty cool.
And you got some points for that.
Just a little bit.
Smart
just
man.
a little bit.
Smart
yeah.
man. Nice
So,
job.
but that's
Mr.
it. That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones.
Just finance at 5, nothing further.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Smith.
I'll set special issues for 6:30, and for those of you who weren't
Oh, you
able-
mean 6:45?
No, he said
Oh, I'm
6:15.
sorry. Okay, I had you down for 30. Okay.
Yeah, no, he said
Excuse me,
15.
6:30. Got
Yeah,
it.
6:30. And for those of you who weren't able to attend the Pink House movie premiere, documentary premiere, we now have the link to the documentary on the city website. Brian uploaded, he uploaded an updated version today because the filmmaker sent another one. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I suggest you go on. It really is very interesting. And we're going to get hard copies for the library to keep in their archive, and also I think we're going to get a copy for the city to have. But then everybody else can watch it online.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wyatt?
Just a reminder that Cornapalooza will be on March 15th. There's still teams and sponsorships available, so if you're interested, you can go to the website or talk to anyone on the board.
Thank you, sir. And Mrs. Andrus?
I wanted to mention some of the work that Counselor Smith and I are doing with the Census Committee. We've got about a dozen dates coming up in March and April where the library, Sanford, the Homewood Fire Department's mobile unit will be out, available for folks to come in and use any computers to participate in the census. So, of course, we're going to be hammering that message for the next few months. We desperately need everyone to participate because we are in danger of losing one, possibly two congressional seats. So very important among many other things that comes with. We had an excellent counselor roundtable today. We had not met since November, so we had Bessemer, Birmingham, Mountain Brook, Hoover, Homewood, and Vestavia, along with our Jefferson County Commissioner and his office. We met over at the zoo, and we are really making progress on this recycling project. We heard from a friend of mine named Jessica Finley, who has a new startup company called Neo Waste, where she's turning all plastics up to even including 3 through 7 into a fuel product. And right now they have a prototype at Sunoco out in West Birmingham. And so we're really interested. I mean, it's already being used in India. So this is not, this project at Sunoco is not to see if it works. They already know it works. They're using it in India. The guy who invented it is from India. So we really feel like we are moving forward with this, and we are looking to formalize the counselor roundtable, much like the Mayor's Association. So we're looking to put that into an actual formal body, and that is with the help of Gus Hurd Hughes, who was there, a Homewood resident who is the vice president of the Community Foundation. So we really made a lot of progress today. We missed Councilor Thames and Councilor Gwaltney, but we are hosting next month. It's going to be actually at Vulcan. So Darlene Negrado is going to have us there. So I invite everyone to attend. It's just been such a fantastic group. We've been doing this for a little over a year now, and the relationships that we formed and what we can learn from the other cities. That, of course, Mayor McBrayer knows his work with the mayors. It's the same kind of thing, and just the friendships that we formed, and really would love for y'all to participate. So as long as we don't have a quorum. No quorum. But certainly it's open. But it's been a great experience. Also wanted to thank Parks and Rec for having the Birmingham Track Club at Patriot Park this past weekend. So we had a great social there.
Participation that's not covered, not prohibited by the Open Meetings Act.
Oh, okay. Great. Great. Well, I would love for y'all to attend. I mean, it's just really, they're just fantastic people, and it's great to learn from our fellow cities. And the regional cooperation, as Mayor McBrayer knows, is just really important for the success of our entire area. So it's been a great experience.
Great.
That's it.
And I can't believe I'm going to have to ask you for a report from the tennis team.
We had a great meet. We went to Tuscaloosa, and girls and boys won. Listen,
I'm going to report you to your children.
That's
what I'm
right.
going to do,
You're right.
so.
I'm sorry. Thank you. You're right. We usually get hammered by this team from Hillcrest, and we won 7-2, boys and girls. So we're really pleased to have Maggie White with us. It's her senior year. She will be playing tennis at UAB next year. She is playing for the tennis team this year. We're really excited. My son's playing number 3 tennis right now, and we just have a really great group of kids, and we got 2 8th graders playing for the boys. So I mean, it's a young, good team. So
Great. Good to hear. And I'll just mention one thing, and I think everybody already knows this, and Mr. Thames kept us informed about the news last week about our superintendent, who is announcing that he is leaving, if I'm not correct, I believe it is in June. June 3rd, thank you. And so that, in my opinion, is going to be one great loss for this city. But I know we are in excellent position to find a strong, suitable replacement. I don't know how we're going to fill those shoes with a candidate who can reach out and touch as many students as Dr. Bill Cleveland has done for all of these years as superintendent. You can say a lot of things about him as superintendent, and I think absolutely majority of those will be absolutely positive, but no one can outdistance that man with regard to his contact and his connection with our student body and with those teachers. And I really hope that's going to be a characteristic that we look for in our new superintendent. But I will happily defer all of that to our school board and Mr. Thames to monitor that and keep us posted on that process. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn and see you guys in March. Thank you.